Welcome to episode 292 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. And now a word from our sponsor, Scholastic Teachables. When teachers turn to you for downloadable instruction resources, who should you turn to? Scholastic Teachables. You get an instant, unlimited access to thousands of activity sheets, lesson plans, mini books, and more online for every subject in grades pre-K to 6. Many are available in Spanish too. It's so easy to use. Just search, select, and print. With Scholastic Teachables, there's no more clicking from site to site looking for materials that are high quality, rigorous, and engaging. From the most trusted name in learning, every resource is educator-created and expert-vetted. To learn more, visit scholastic.com/teachables. To subscribe to Scholastic Teachables, please reach out to your Scholastic Library specialist at 1-800-387-1437. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I'm so excited to be working with them. I'm also grateful to Capstone for their commitment to support the podcast in Season 7. They're offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for today's episode, Oh No You Didn't, and my conversation with Katie McNamara. Katie McNamara, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me again. You know, I love talking to you.
Well, the last time I saw you was in person. We were both in California. We were enjoying tapas and sharing a pitcher of sangria on a lovely summer evening in San Diego during ALA's annual conference. And it's a fond memory of mine.
It was fabulous. I think we had, 6, 7 states represented. It was just amazing. And we had 7 states, there were only 8 people. So that tells me the connections we can make with this. And Amy, you are a really great facilitator of those connections with your podcast series.
Well, I'm very spoiled because I have a lot of people who are happy to share. You're one of them. You regularly lead trainings with teachers, with school librarians. And I love that, when we just push record, anybody tuning in can benefit from this conversation. But it does take generous people like yourself to take time out of your busy weekend to join me. We are 3 time zones away. It was a lot easier when we were both in San Diego in person.
It was. So we'll have to just connect in person again. We'll figure out some, maybe a librarian camping trip. That would be fun.
I'm telling you. It is, but the fact is we're also friends who text, and that PLN becomes a lot closer the more regularly you lean on each other, and the miles sort of disappear. And I think that's true whenever you connect with other school librarians. All of a sudden that time zone difference and it really doesn't matter. So, Katie, let me ask you, for listeners who are just meeting you for the first time, would you introduce yourself? Tell us about your library and the grades you serve and some of the programs you offer.
So I serve by day high school teacher librarian in Central California. And so that's doing all the things. I have programming for all of my different teachers, as well as those, there's always those teachers that like never bring their classes. So leveraging that as well, monitoring students with, or serving students rather, with a fixed schedule and a dual flexible schedule, which yes, is a lot, but there's that. And then by night, sounds so salacious, right? But no, I provide classes and run a program for teacher librarians that are getting their credential. So I get to like help. I call them my baby librarians, even though some of them are older than me. They're mine.
So I'm fascinated because when it comes to working with those people who are getting their school librarian credentials, whether it's they're working towards a master's in library science or they're getting a certificate, many of them are already positioned in school libraries in large part because of the teacher shortage, because of the shortage in general of professionals working in our libraries. So I imagine that over time that's changed for you, that the people you're working with towards this credential are by and large already working in school libraries, or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. Because why in the world am I going to drop 20 grand on a credential in just the hopes that maybe some admin will realize like, yes, libraries matter and there should be a person that's knowledgeable running that space. So most of my candidates are indeed working in a library on an emergency credential. And there's that old joke with teachers like, oh my gosh, all I was given were keys to the classroom and the teacher book. Well, guess what? New librarians are lucky if they get a key and there is no teacher book. So we're just like learning simultaneously while doing and just hoping that we're making decent-ish decisions in the moment.
Well, and I think everyone who's tuning in can relate to this. That the first time you walk into a space and realize that unlike when you were a classroom teacher teaching at a grade level or a subject, you could step outside your door, look left, look right. You had maybe 5 to 10 other colleagues who taught what you did in a space just like yours and oftentimes had taught the classes that you are now being assigned to teach. I know that was my experience teaching at the high school, that everybody I worked with had at one point taught the classes I was teaching because they didn't want to teach them anymore. But they were within a stone's throw, like up and down the hall. You walk into your new library and there's nobody. Like in many times we don't have assistants. So you're sort of like, well, I'm just going to be like figuring this out as I go. Trial by fire is sort of what I likened it to,
Completely. And if you're lucky, there's somewhere, whether it's in a binder or a flash drive that doesn't work anymore, like things that I've experienced that happens to have policies and procedures. Well, sometimes those are outdated, like they were written when that previous librarian was discovering it, like, oh my goodness, I have to write these things down, but then things evolved and they didn't update it. So now you still are floundering, even though you thought you found like the gold mine that was going to tell you how to do things. Like, no. And then, like, who do you ask? And not to throw shade at administrators. They have a totally different role, but like, they don't know all the ins and the outs of what we have to do.
Exactly. Well, and I just remember walking into my first library and, I was very fortunate because my predecessor was moving to the high school. I was taking the elementary job. And while I was comfortable asking them questions, I was also a little reserved because if I revealed just how much I didn't know, I was convinced that somebody would figure it out and I would not have that job for long. But, you also, what we inherit is oftentimes a time capsule. It is, we walk into a space and unlike a classroom where if the person left, they took everything with them. You walk into a library and it's just kind of like time stood still. The last person sort of picked up the things that they owned and they walked out the door. So you have things you can go through, but you're right. It's like archival. So it's oftentimes very outdated.
And you don't know what things you should let go of yet. I spent the first 2 years like, oh my goodness, I'm not even changing anything because I don't even know how to do this gig. Like, what if I get rid of something and then find out later I need it?
Over the summer.
I filled up a few dumpsters.
Yes. A pro tip, friends, if you're going to do a clean out, do it over the summer when hopefully people aren't doing. There aren't witnesses. You heard it here. We first first met in November of 2022. You and I recorded episode 201, Library Science Students. Can you give us an update? Is this a program that is still up and running? And how has it changed since we spoke 2 years ago?
So it is definitely still up and running, and it was totally a labor of love. But finally, boom, 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 we did get an updated course of study, and it is A through G accredited. So super excited about that, because that just really, they were already doing the work, but when you have this extra label on it, it just really helped get all of the stakeholders involved with counselors, administration, and district people. Oh, yes, this is a real class. Oh, yes, digital literacy is important. Oh, yes. So it just helped to emphasize what was already happening.
Well, and it legitimated it. So your program now was regarded as an authentic and actual meaningful experience for our students, whereas some people might have made their own judgment about what you were providing for your students. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you don't really do anything there, right? I see you just sitting. Well, yeah, they're sitting while they're creating this amazing resource for sometimes even that teacher. But yeah.
Well, and depending on your administrators, I've had administrators decide that I wasn't doing anything because I was sitting in front of my computer. And I actually had an administrator, and this is more than a decade ago. They said, I walked through the library and I saw you sitting at your computer. I sort of was taken aback. I was like, now, understand that if the same administrator had seen a teacher looking at their computer, there would be no question they're obviously working on something, right? And I had to explain to this administrator, yeah, I was working on the district newsletter, which I put together on behalf of our specials teachers. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, like as if I wasn't walking around actively with a cart of books and an armful, that I clearly wasn't doing anything meaningful towards my program. And so, yeah, perceptions are everything. It's just something that we've discovered that administrators define like productivity differently, depending on what they see, or more importantly, what they don't see you doing.
So bonus tip there, anytime an administrator walks into your space, I try to train my library science students. An old person comes in, you greet them, and you say what we're doing currently. Like, that's the drill. Hey, hi, welcome to our space, blah, blah, blah. Right now we're working on yada, yada, to just really help express that. But if you're at your desk and you're not actively engaged with people, then it's, oh, hi, welcome. I am currently working on blah, blah, blah. Like, you're just going to tell them, so whatever they're thinking, you're going to clarify it. This is what I'm doing right now and why I'm doing it.
Well, and that whole accountability piece, I know that I am it depends on my administrator, but I am now being asked to document. And so when our students come in and they sign in, and this is a trick I learned from Tampa AASL annual in 2023, but I have the students signing in under different categories. So friends, I work at a high school. So when they come in, they have to identify why they're coming in. And if they're asking for technology help, if they're asking help for printing, if they're asking for research help, and so we have that documented. But by and large, I'm also self-reporting because I'm keeping a Google sheet of how I spend my time with my teachers, because my teachers obviously aren't signing in when they come to the Learning Commons. But I need to have some way of being able to authenticate what I do every day so that I can keep my full-time job.
It's tough. And maybe that should be another episode later on, because I tried that like multiple times. Like, okay, these were how many like phone call emergencies that happened. These were how many times like someone came and grabbed me during the day. Just last week, before classes even started, a teacher had reached out to me 5 times with different issues via in-person, text, phone call. I think there was an email in there too. Like, oh my goodness, I've still got to get ready for my day. But I was exhausted before the first period.
I think we can all relate. Been there, done that. Absolutely. Our day starts whether we're ready or not. And that's accounts for how much coffee I drink on a regular basis, because I hit the ground running every time I walk in the building. You know, Katie, I want to credit you with conceiving the premise of today's episode and oh, no, you didn't. Surviving library land and thriving. Before we dive in, let's establish, first of all, you and I are definitely what I would consider to be veteran school librarians. This is my 18th year, 14 years elementary. This is my 4th year in the high school. How about you?
So I've only been a librarian for 11 years, but in that time, I've already served as my state organization president. I received AASL Tech Troubadour Award, and I think a lot of it in part with the work I was doing as a librarian and how I grew with that. Because I came on the scene in 2013. If we remember, 2013 is when Google just exploded, like everything changed. And so I also became a Google Certified Innovator, which there's only around 4,000 of those in the world.
Impressive. All things I will never do, but that's okay. I'm happy to press record and take advantage of all your expertise that you're about to impart on us. So, you are responsible for today's conversation. Would you share with us conceptually how you came about this today's conversation that we're going to share with listeners today?
Well, I've been really fortunate to do a lot of presentations. I've been teaching 28 years, and I started with doing professional development my second year. And so I was really young, and I noticed some of the pushback I got from people like, if I just go ahead and shift my title a bit, maybe that'll help protect me. And I'm a little sarcastic. Those of you that know me are saying, oh no, Katie, you're a lot sarcastic. So yes, I could never teach elementary school, whatever. But going with the, oh no, you didn't, I think it's just really helpful to know, okay, where we have a real conversation. I'm not sugarcoating stuff for you. Yes, some of this might be like, oh my, I'm doing that. I need to shift it. But we need to have those conversations as well. We, in education, seem to sugarcoat more than we should, or we make these plans and oh, it's a 7-year plan or it's a 4-year plan. Oh my gosh, these students are going to graduate and we're still figuring this out. Why? That's a disservice. And isn't that even neglect and maybe even child abuse? Eek, I don't know. But yeah, so no, we're going to cut to the chase. Sorry, not a lot of sugarcoating, but if you need a cry call later, we can get on the phone and have a drink of your favorite flavor, whatever, and talk it out some more.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've been more than candid in the conversations that I have shared on this platform because I can. If we are meant to grow, we have to be vulnerable and admit when when you know better, you do better. And, there are many things I wish I could turn around and say, yeah, I did that, but I don't do that anymore. But unless we have an opportunity to sort of commiserate and talk with colleagues who have the same kind of challenges, I can talk to colleagues, at work, but none of them do the job I do. So my ability to drastically change my practice for the better comes incrementally when I learn from people like you. And that was part of the inspiration for having a podcast in the first place, that my opportunities to learn from other school librarians were limited to if I was lucky to go to the state conference. And that was really the only opportunity I would have had to really benefit from other librarians. So I appreciate that, we're having this opportunity today to sort of talk about things that might have made sense at some point, but now completely, once you realize that there are other ways to do something, that I hope that shedding that kind of light allows us to do some of that introspection. I think listeners, I've heard from listeners who are like, it gives me an opportunity to process what I want to do moving forward, sort of privately. We sort of reflect on our practice and then we move forward.
And circling back to what we mentioned at the beginning, when you go into this space and you're new, you take on those practices because you don't know any different. So it's not that you're intentionally making the wrong choices. It's just you don't know any different. Oh, X happens. I'll just keep X going while I'm trying to just survive and keep my nose above water. Never mind the mouth.
Yeah, no, exactly. I remember moving in, and when I taught elementary and I was in a new building, my first tip was to follow the lead that the kids did, without even letting them know that you were new, just kind of watching their patterns. And you could tell with the students who had been in that school for years that there was a particular flow to how the classes progressed. And watching the students, oftentimes I learned more than I ever would have gotten talking to another educator. Let's go ahead. What would you like to share with listeners as to kick off this Oh No You Didn't episode?
Go ahead and dig in with fines right away. when I came in, there were fines and it was set up. And I'll be honest, I kept it. And then I had these conversations with kids like, well, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it. It just is. No, there's all kinds of power. I can waive stuff. I didn't know that. But like, why? Okay, so, and I'm not really trying to be a brat. I know I'm totally coming off like that. But like, what is the point of your fines? Because it doesn't teach responsibility. It doesn't get your books back on time. What does it do? Oh, this is what it does. It tells people with money that they can get away with doing whatever. And if you look at it from that perspective, like, is that really a message we want to send? And I've mostly taught in impoverished schools, and I really love those students. So like, why am I doing this to them? Like, what do I really want? I want my book back. So instead, I went ahead and I changed it to no fines, but I have 2 days of grace after the due date, and the book is marked lost. So it's not like waiting months of being marked lost. It's marked lost right away. So now there's that $25 on their account. Now they're freaking out. They weren't freaking out about that $1 fine. Like, whatever, I'll pay that when I get to it. And they still don't get my book. So that just works out better. And in my state, there is ed code about like that they could be decided by school district, because some states don't like to make certain decisions for whatever reason. So think about your why behind it.
This is one of the things, I mean, you honestly could start a fight with school librarians when you say, I don't fine. I got to tell you, basically when I was an elementary librarian, we had fines. And when I mean fines, not overdue fines, but we had fines like, and I was one librarian in a district with 6 other elementary librarians. And all of a sudden I was like, I don't get to decide that in this building we don't, because there is this consistency, and we all of us worked in each other's libraries, and there really was a sort of a consistency thing. So I will say there was something that I did encounter with a couple of my buildings, and that was they referred to it as like a principal's fund or an angel's fund, so that we had, when it came to students who were economically disadvantaged, those particular fines, or they were unhoused. And so when they're unhoused, and then with as many times as these families are moving, the onus is not on the student, because the student is being uprooted and changing locations often. Their belongings, whether they were theirs or they belonged to the school, were probably not going to be making the transition to the next location where they would be staying. And so we found, especially when we were trying to support our students who were economically disadvantaged, and we could look at that in our student record, we had to recognize that this policy was not going to work for a large majority of our students. And if we were holding them accountable for a book, for a place that they haven't lived in months or weeks, the chance of us getting those back were nil. But there were sometimes we could tap a fund where they'd say, listen, it's the same fund that pays for things like field trips for these students. So when students, couldn't afford a field trip or a uniform fee or those kinds of things, those came out of a school fund that we were able to pull from.
And I'd like to clarify to you. So when I'm talking about getting rid of fines, I mean the late fines, like the money that adds up for the book being late. I see. Now, if the whole cost of the book is a different thing, and like totally concur with what Amy said there. If there's different housing issues, things happen. Like I've got people that are getting evicted all the time, and they don't even have a chance to get their book. And look at your ed code for your state. It's really interesting. So mine even has itemized, if the damage is not intentional, you can't technically charge the child, which is fascinating because the money comes somewhere.
Yep. Well, and I'll be honest, my first library, I absolutely fined for damaged books, and lost books. There were fines for damaged books and lost books, and was it successful? Not really. It was probably the worst part of my day when I had to confront somebody about something like this. And I remember hearing about how the book got damaged, or, when somebody returns you a paperback book in a Ziploc bag, because it's usually, a new puppy. Mrs. Herman, we got a new puppy. I said, I know you did. How? Because I found the bite marks in your book, because they always go for the spine. They go for the spine because of the glue. It tastes like, I tell the kids that book tastes like a Snickers to your dog. So please do not keep your book anywhere where you have a puppy. But no, I mean, we're talking about, somebody is going to say, hey, there's a whole accountability piece. There's a whole responsibility piece. We have to be responsible for the things that we borrow. And it's hard because, when it's a different story when you're talking about you're borrowing a school violin or the school cello. Very different story than you're borrowing a paperback book from the library. And so, no, I appreciate that it's, the overdues. I don't think I've ever charged overdues. And that was just past practice. We didn't have, when's the book due? When you're done. When you're done with the book, turn it in, please. Please turn it in.
I will tell you, letting go the late fees has helped circulation. I'm at high school level again. So I've got people that have gone through, of course, elementary and junior high, and it's classified people running the librarian that have charged fees. And it has just done so much trauma. They are afraid to check out a book.
Absolutely. And I think there is this, and I think a lot of our public libraries have also gone that route as well, that, removing those sort of, late fees has brought in more people because now they don't fear the libraries. Like as long as you have those amnesty days, you're like, we're having an amnesty day. Everybody bring their library things and we're just going to start over. And I think a lot of the larger library systems realize that when you hire a third party to try and track down these missing materials and to find people, you're spending so much money and your return on that investment is nil. You're not getting those books back. So, I think that's fairly true of our public library counterparts as well. So let's go ahead and talk about your next, oh no, you didn't.
I love supporting fellow educators, especially fellow librarians. I'm kind of close with y'all. So I will notice something they're doing and suggest they put in for a session. You've got to share this. Oh no, I can't. I'm new. Whether it's it'll be anywhere. Literally, it's been even 10 years. Oh, I'm too new to do this. Or, oh, I'm not like you. No one else is. Thank goodness. You are you. And that is amazing. So don't ever think because you've only done something for a small amount of time that your voice is invalid. Really want that and bring us some new life. And honestly, if you've been thinking about it, oh my gosh, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it if I have a partner. Reach out to me. I will co-present with you. We got this.
I absolutely agree. I love talking with rookie and first year librarians. Those episodes have been a lot of fun. And we do have a rookie playlist and the conversations with school librarians who are within the first 5 years of becoming a librarian are some of the most insightful because the learning curve is so steep. And it'll never be steeper. I mean, and we are regularly becoming new again. And when you recognize that we are new, oftentimes, somebody as advanced as myself who's been teaching since 1992, and I will share that with everybody, I am always learning. And 3 years ago, 2021, I became a high school librarian. I might as well have been a brand new librarian all over again because everything's new. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable. So we can be new at the profession. We can be new at that grade level. We can be new in the district. And when you recognize it's always requiring us to work outside of our comfort zone, speaks volumes about how amazing we are as professionals that we're willing to do that. Because I know a lot of teachers who have found themselves landing. Is that the right term? They've landed. When you talk to them and you say, how long have you been here? And their answer is forever. That should not at all discourage us from challenging ourselves. Whenever we work outside of our comfort zone, we are doing so because we feel passionately about our skills and we feel sure enough to be able to venture out into the unknown.
And sometimes I've even noticed I'll use my presentation proposals as a hack for myself. I know I want to accomplish something this year, but I haven't given it the time. Well, suddenly now I'm supposed to do a session on X and I've got 3 months to figure it out. So now it creates this urgency for me. It's kind of a weird way to gamify my instruction for me. Yes, Katie, you said you wanted to do this to yourself. Well, now you really have to figure it out because you're talking about it to other educators in a few months.
lot of districts that kick off the school year with an opportunity for all of us to become those leaders and present sessions to our peers. And for me, it's a really important time to sort of show off what I can do as a leader when it comes to teaching PD. And so I'll teach all those sessions, 3 sessions in a row, and my colleagues come in. They're not school librarians. I'm the only school librarian in the district, but I'm teaching PD on AI, on Google, and on researching using databases, which, brings people in. And yet, until you sort of have that on your calendar, my knowledge of AI, I was sort of scant. I was sort of learning on behalf of my building. But you're right. When we say, I'm going to present on these topics, it sort of forces your hand. And you're like, well, then, I guess I better sit down and assess what I know. And more importantly, the gaps in my learning. So let me go ahead and ask you, this is a subject I feel particularly tuned into. You mentioned something about not getting lunch during the day. Can you please expound on your own personal experience? Because I know listeners right now, when I say, all right, are you eating lunch? Are you taking your lunch? How are you spending that lunch that you and all your peers are entitled to every day?
Yeah, as far as I know, we have not been replaced by robots. Granted, it'd be impossible. So we do kind of need food and sustenance in our body to continue. Hangry is a real thing. Probably not good for those around you at all. So yes, take your lunch. And I get it. I've worked through my lunch so many times. Stop. Just stop. Because what you're saying when you don't take a lunch is that you don't need it, that your work isn't valuable. And if you phrase it like that, oh my gosh, that's really what you're saying, that you're not busy. So you really don't need a break. You're really not doing anything. So why? Oh yeah, I can just go ahead and do this stuff all day long and no big deal because I'm really not doing much of anything. Like, is that the messaging you want? Like, no, you deserve a break. Never mind like labor law and whatnot, but you've got a schedule. Lunch is on there. You take it. No one else is covering your space. Then you have a key. Hopefully you have a key. You lock the space. If people start unlocking the space, I've had that happen too. Leave the space. Even if you're going to sit in your car for 10 minutes, do that. If the weather is nice, go for a walk, get to a different location, but honor this. And I didn't do it and didn't do it. And then finally I was like, wait a minute, I've got to do this. And then there was a realization oh, we have a situation where the library is not open all day long. Oh, maybe we should figure this out. And there's people in charge of figuring it out that have multiple degrees. If they want that library open all the time, they truly can figure it out.
Well, they do, because when you consider our main office never closes and our student service center never closes, because they have somebody rotating in and to make sure everybody who works in a place that has to stay open the entire school day, they have somebody coming in and rotating out for lunches. And, if they can do that in the main office and in the counseling center, they sure as heck can make time for us as school librarians to get that lunch. And I appreciate not everybody works where you are supported by a union, but I do remember I was in a situation years ago that was rather hostile, working with an administrator who really did not feel I should have even been there at all. And it took my physician raising this point as I went to my well checkup, and she looked at me, she goes, "You just lost 5 pounds. Can you tell me what's going on? This is very atypical." I'm like, well, I'm just, work. It's a lot of stress at work. And she's like, "Are you even sitting down and eating?" And I was like, well, no, it's really been bad. So when you realize this is not the kind of quick weight loss program everybody should be on, I'll tell you my workaround. I set a timer. I get a 30-minute lunch. I set like a timer. And more importantly, especially during the school year, I'll edit my podcast during my lunch. And I'll actively be working on something. And if people walk in my office, they know I'm wearing my headphones, I'm editing, and nobody bothers me because it's my lunch. I'm actively eating. I'm doing what I want. I'm going to be editing my podcast usually during my lunch. And my faculty knows not to bother me because I've got my headphones on and I'm clearly doing something that is my business. And they just go about their own business. And I eat my lunch. And we need to make ourselves a priority. And again, skipping meals is not a good idea. Not something you can certainly sustain. I appreciate that sometimes when life intervenes, we have to, eat while standing up. I've mastered that.
I will look at my day and know what I'm doing to determine, okay, is this a lunch that can be with a fork, or it needs to be stuffing your mouth on the fly food? Like, I really plan for that. I also want to acknowledge, I know it's not always easy, and I've lived it. Like, I was called into the office, had difficult conversations with the principal multiple times this 1 year, saying, hey, I've only closed the library a handful of times, like maybe a third of the time I'm taking a lunch even. And then I was told, well, that's too much. Like, wait, you just said out loud, and I have a union that I'm supposed to work through my lunch for you? Like, wow. And things got worse. So I completely understand it can be a very difficult thing. But if you don't advocate for yourself, darling, sadly, no one else will.
Exactly. So I love this next one. This next, oh no, you didn't. Waiting to be invited to recurring meetings. Please explain, because I am guilty as charged.
So like 90% meetings that are happening should include the school librarian. There's something going on that's going to impact you, whether it's instructional, whether it's facility-wise, or maybe even the meeting, there's something that they're working on that you're already doing, but they're unaware, or you could easily shift to, or you can be that fabulous angel with all of the glitter and confetti and rainbows around, like, oh yes, I can do this for you, and just move on and make everything better. So again, you're valuable, you're competent, you're knowledgeable, all these fabulous things, and you should be involved at that conversation. There's meetings about literacy. Librarians aren't always invited. I don't understand that. If there's a literacy meeting, literacy team, why the bleep is there not the librarian on that team right away? It happens. I'll tell you, my school site, there's a literacy team. I'm not on it.
What about our curriculum meetings? Okay, the ones I'm thinking about, the curriculum meetings. Hello. We deal with content, right? That's all. That's our, meat and potatoes. We deal with resources, and it's content specific. What about for those of us who are IB? I'm an IB school. I should be going to the IB meetings. Why am I not going to the IB meetings? I don't know, but appreciate that if my job is to help everyone, and we've got IB in the school, I can do things to support this program specifically. But I got to have a seat at the table. And if you don't have a seat at the table, you're supposed to bring a folding chair. And I realize, that this idea of barging in on something, but sometimes we need to be advocating for what we can do, because clearly the dynamic right now has not shifted in our favor. We cannot wait for somebody to have that epiphany. Hey, wait a minute. Don't we have an information specialist in the building? We do. That's right. Why don't we have them here in attendance?
And honestly, that's exactly it. They haven't invited you because they didn't think about it, because they're not completely understanding all the nuances of what you do. So when you show up and provide input, oh, wow, thank you for being here. I hadn't thought of it like that. So like you mentioned, IB, Avid, there's all these different things. And then there's the horrific saying, oh my gosh, okay, I have to process a minute. If you're not at the table, you're on the table.
I've heard if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Okay, similar, yeah.
So I think that especially when it comes to working in a climate where what we do is perhaps a little ambiguous, that because we have so many responsibilities, we wear so many hats in the building, it is entirely possible that people have decided for themselves what it is we do. And until we break through that stereotype, until we prove it to be otherwise, they're not going to give us that kind of benefit of the doubt. I will say, I remember running into a couple of teachers who were complaining about the new reading program. And they're like, oh, well, we have to read this and we have to read this. And I was like, we have books like that in the library already. And they're like, well, no, see, it says we have to use this particular reader. And that's why we're making a photocopy of it 32 times, because we have to use this prescribed reader. And I'm like, Or we could use the books, and you're talking about all these reading features. And it was like, but they wanted to use a program. They had spent so much money of curriculum dollars investing in a reading program that nobody liked. And I said, we've got books in the library that could accomplish the same thing. You don't have to buy some box with a program. You just got to include your librarian in the next meeting. So no, I totally agree. But it does require that we have to advocate for ourselves and say, I would love to be able to contribute to that meeting, because there are a lot of things that I could definitely shed light on. And again, all it takes is making your way and find that one person that you know on that committee and start making some inroads. So let's talk about reports.
So again, like going back to like the newness, like a report, that's just something else. I don't even know my system yet. How in the world am I supposed to do a report? Well, that's why you're here listening, right? So you've probably seen like all kinds of different gorgeous reports and different things. My report is gorgeous, but I will tell you, I do not have a report year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm just going to stop there to like protect my guiltiness. But the reports are so critical. And it could be just 2 items. Maybe it's how many classes came in and how many books got checked out. Like it could be really, really simple. You don't have to go big and have a gazillion data points. And no one's reading a gazillion data points. So really focus on start with 2. What are the 2 most critical things? And we hear about end of year reports all the time. I would say that's too late. Okay. Have those those touch mark moments throughout the year. Maybe it's quarterly. So if you only have those 2 items, like you're doing that quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and guess what? It builds, and now you can do an end of year report super easy, and bam. I didn't do my end of year report at the end of year, and I was so mortified. And Sarah Smith, I was talking to her, and it was fabulous. She's like, that's okay, Katie. You can just go ahead and wrap it up and then share it at the beginning of the year, because bam, there's a new fiscal year, new money. So then that is another point of, oh yeah, the library is doing something. So anything you want to showcase and mark, I'm very intentional. My header is a series of 3 to 4 images of kids actively doing something in the space.
Well, and I know that people can get rather sophisticated with their data, and data is one of those things I realize that administrators, it gives them a very rapid way to appreciate what it is we are accomplishing in our space. If we can provide it, quantify it. If we can quantify it in numbers, all of a sudden that makes a lot more sense to using some sort of infographic that your administrator can quickly get a sense of the meaningful contribution that we add to our learning spaces through the interactions that we have with our students and our staff. This is how we make sure that there isn't any doubt in people's minds as to the reason why they have a school librarian on staff.
Also with reports, so what I've done now is I've got a Google Sheet. So I decided which items I really wanted to make sure I'm hitting. And then in this sheet, I have named them to where they correlate to what the report is called in my library management system. Because I can tell you, even though I did it once or twice or 50 times, I go back there and depending on my brain that day, I'm like, oh my gosh, what the hell was that thing called? Oh, it's right there in the sheet. I've got it. All I have to do is fill in these numbers, and admin loves the numbers. Like they don't care so much about the stories. The numbers are the easy peasy things. So in the resources, I have that sheet too for you. I use Insignia. So if you're with Insignia, the data things will be the same. Those of you that don't, just make a copy, change it, of course. But I've got it set to the things that ask for numbers. It is going to automatically give you the number for end of the year. It's already set up for you to do the end of year report if you want to use my sheet. So yeah, the sheet is linked in the resources. Just make a copy and tweak it for what you want.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. How about scheduling classes all day?
So you can schedule a class all day, but don't do all day every day throughout the week. I know. Sitting at your computer is like mortifying, especially like I have distress from being a teacher. Like if a principal walked in, I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and get up. Never mind, like there's a gazillion things you have to do at your desk. And as a librarian, there's even more we have to do at our desk. So I call it administrative duties. Bam, just administrative duties. That's what I'm working on. I'm there. And if I'm talking to a principal, that helps make more sense too, because yeah, they're sitting at their desk doing administrative duties. No one's going to walk in and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these great books. You've done a fabulous job curating a diverse collection. That's not going to come out of anyone's mouth that visits your library, unless it's like me. I might notice that and say that to you. But you've got to give yourself that time. It's a lot of stuff to do that at home consistently or on the weekend. That is a disservice to your family that you currently have, the one you might have, whether they're like human family, fur babies, even yourself. Like, no, we're contract employees. Use your school time as much as possible. Protect yourself. So it's like booking the day for you. And maybe it's only half a day. You can go ahead and decide that, but make sure you've carved out time where you can get some things done.
Well, and I think you're particularly speaking to the people who have a flexible schedule, because I'll tell you, as somebody who taught a fixed schedule for 14 years, there is no time in the day. Like if you're teaching a fixed schedule, somebody else has already populated it with which classes are coming down and when they're coming down. And I remember teaching a fixed schedule, and at one point there was nobody coming in during one of those times. And my building secretary said, write administrative time in there, because if you don't, people will think you're not working. And it's sad but true. But I will say, because my schedule, when people sign out our space, there are multiple spaces. And I will say right now that when I have two classes coming down competing for time with the librarian, we've got to be very clear about what's going on. I had because we have just a Google sheet and teachers can sign up for the different spaces. And the space is a resource, friends. When you realize our space is a resource, our print and our digital resources are a resource, and we are the human resource. And I had some teachers coming down expecting me to lead a class and not realizing the other classes down there had already had those conversations with me. But it's an open document. Anybody can write it down. And I'm like, quick, I'm going back and I'm saying, I'll pause. I'm doing an orientation during that class period. Do you need me for something? Or are you just looking for a different place to have your class? And so you have to have like those sort of like awkward conversations. But for us, it's orientation. You can't do that without me. So if you need me to do an orientation, I am also not teaching other classes at the same time.
Yeah, definitely not. So when teachers are booking with me too, I tell them I need a grace period, like 3 days. Let me know what you want so I can go ahead and prepare it for you. If you are on a situation like Amy was mentioning where it's a fixed schedule and someone else is booking it for you and you have no time, you've got to have that conversation with the person that's doing that to you. Let them know what else you need to do and put it back on them. Like, hey, I also have to do blah, 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 blah. When do you want me to do that? And they can then like, because maybe they really hadn't thought of it. So it's real easy for us to get upset because it's like, it does feel like a personal attack, but they might not realize that that's what's happening. So again, we've got to be that bigger human and go have that conversation. And depending on how they react, now you can decide your next steps.
Well, and I think you also have to temper this conversation. And I think you have to be careful in how you phrase this, because saying, when am I going to be able to do the things that need to be done, is giving the person the benefit of the doubt that they may not understand the complexity of what we do. And they may be oversimplifying what it is they think we do. But I also caution anybody tuning in right now for you to simply say, well, then I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing that. I have known individuals who, in anger, and these were not school librarians, these were teachers who were finding out that they were going to be split between multiple buildings, and they're clearly being driven by a great deal of resentment and anger, simply sent out an email to the families and saying, listen, now that I'm split between two buildings, and I've covered multiple buildings, that I did that for years. I was a traveling librarian for 7 years, and I traveled every 3 hours. You better believe I did not fire off some angry email to my family saying, hey, listen, since I'm not in your building all day long, these things are not going to happen. No. Because you know what? You communicate that with the people who can make those changes. I just want you to exercise some caution because especially when it comes to fixed schedules, moving between buildings, I've done both of those things. And you want to be very careful that when you are frustrated, when you are trying to figure out how it is all going to get done, how you go about this is vitally important. Communicating those frustrations, number one, with your union representative is probably the safest and first thing I would recommend. Be very cautious who you share this frustration with, because if you express this outwardly to your families, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. I would recommend caution if you are ever in a situation where you are being overwhelmed because your roles and responsibilities are not fully appreciated by the people who are in charge of your schedule. So, move cautiously and simply contact your union representative. If you are not union, then make sure that you are going at this in a way that does not in any way jeopardize your job. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Always have to protect that job base. And it's really how you go about the conversations and who you share it with. I'm not going to do this rant on social media right after I had a meeting with my admin. That is never going to happen.
Well, and that, my friends, is why you have a chat group. And there are some conversations that, and I'm telling you right now, you have one of those days, friends. My email, I'm very forthcoming. You can, if you want to talk to me, I've got a 45-minute drive every day. You and I can talk. You want to come down from some place of anger, if you're filled with rage, fury, whatever it is, reach out to me. We can schedule a chat because I'm going to be driving home. It's going to be 47 minutes before I get home. Please know that if you're in a place where you are concerned that you might vent to somebody who would not perhaps regard this conversation in the privacy that it should be, call me. We will talk and we'll work through this. I promise you. And I do that. I definitely do. I'm happy to give out my number to people who are working through a problem and they don't feel safe sharing it with people who just aren't going to understand. And Katie, you and I mean, there is a 3-hour time difference, which does make things a little more challenging with Katie and I. By the way, friends, I'm Eastern, friends. I'm Eastern time zone. So take that with for what it's worth. We can talk, but understand I'm in Eastern time zone.
Well, I'm Pacific time zone. So between the both of us, I think you can rant like fully. We got it all covered. I do spend a lot of my drives like that. And it's good. Like my responses then are safe in my car. And I'm also helping someone else because even if you've got a fabulous spouse, partner, like unless they're doing this, other people just don't fully get it.
Right. Well, and friends, I'll link in the show notes. I did 3 episodes called Can I Just Vent? Or can I just, these were rants. It was fun. It was so much fun. Each episode, there's, between 4 and 6 people chimed in, they just got on their soapbox and they just had it out. And they did so in a space that's very safe and with an audience that would appreciate their rants. And so I'll link those in the show notes. Can I just vent? You need to find somebody who can relate because we all have been there. I promise you. So let's go ahead. What's this next one? I don't know how you do it is not a compliment. Let's tackle that one, please.
Yeah, when people are like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do it all. Well, friends, I'm not doing it all. No one is doing it all. So when that comes out, it's they're seeing you working more than you should be. Because you're not doing it all. Yeah, what's being sacrificed? The gym, my hobbies, my family, my pets, my garden, all kinds of other things are being neglected. So if you're starting to hear that, I caution you with the utmost love, and I'm seeing an expression on Amy's face right now. She's heard this a lot. That is the neon, flashing, warning sign that holy bejeebies, you've got to stop something.
Newsflash, I'm not doing it all. I can't do it all. And something's got to give. You have to do what works for you to make sure that you are in the best headspace when you go to work every day. I'm going to speak from a place of past experience. And I working in a situation that was very toxic. And you know what? I got a different job. That is a solution that requires a certain amount of privilege. I am able to change jobs because I am in a 2-income household. But I will tell you, for my own mental wellness, it was vitally important. And by the way, the podcast is also something that emerged from that situation. So I started this podcast 8 years ago. and obviously not working in the same set of circumstances, but also a large part of that, in part, yes, the podcast, but also the fact is that I did change jobs. And I did so because I was not in a good place to be supportive to my family, and I clearly was making other people miserable around me. So they said something has to change.
It's hard because most of us, when we started teaching, we're warned, like, you say yes to everything. You just do it all because you don't want to chance maybe losing your job. And then if we left the classroom and then came into Librarian, now we're even more scared because we can look around and we know that position isn't everywhere. But you've got to protect yourself too.
Let's talk about, and this next one, and so a little bit of a pivot, explain about linear shelving and your current wants and needs.
Most of us will go through at least one remodel. We might go through multiple remodels. We might go through even reimaginings of your space. You need to know linear shelving in your current space. So that is taking the time to really measure what is there. Most shelves rock 3 feet. So how many shelves do you have in a bay? Do that multiplication. Figure it out. Know your collective overall linear shelf space. I'm not talking about the shelf space that isn't being fully utilized because you've done dynamic shelving. Yay, that's what you're supposed to do. So just the shelves that currently exist, regardless of their use, know that number, because then that winds up giving you power. And I didn't know it would. I just went through a remodel, friends, and I have about half of my linear space. I have a fraction of what I was promised I was going to get. I gave up some floor space for other shelving things that didn't arrive. And now I can have this conversation about linear shelving and what I can do. And now it seemed as more value, and it can make sense because I actually have someone who is a previous math teacher. And so having those numbers, because that number thing is always what seems to matter, and then go backwards regardless of where you're at, like elementary land to high school, like the books take up different amount of space on the shelf, but you can do that math at 70% full. How many books are on that shelf? So now what is it you're removing? And some states do have a recommendation of X amount of books per student accessible. So all of this comes into play with each other. But if you don't know your linear shelving, you're in a bad situation. And I didn't know mine. And then I had shelves missing. I'm just grateful I took pictures. So I'm scrolling back, double checking, okay, how many shelves were in this bay of that bookcase that now has just vanished? So I can have this conversation intellectually.
Well, and I'm going to tag on a couple things in that respect. First of all, know what you have. I have a photographic inventory of the furniture. And this has been a rather sensitive topic because the furniture was bought for the space. And we cannot call it it's not my furniture. It's not my library. It is our library. It is our furniture. But I took photographs of the furniture that we had and the carts and we have an inventory, because what happens is I'm gone for 3 months over the summer, come back, and I'm like, wait a minute. Something's not right. Something does not feel right. And I can't put my finger on it because it's been 3 months and summer school was in there and, mass chaos. But all of a sudden I was like, wait, I'm missing. And I realized this was over the summer. I was like, wait, I'm missing something. I've got my inventory to go through. I've taken a picture of every piece of furniture. I've taken account of every single kind of chair, every single kind of table. And when I'm missing those things, I'm like, oh, pause. I'm missing some things and I've got to figure out what is going on. Now, at the end of the day, it is ultimately the school's decision what they're going to do with certain things, but you have to be able to point to an accounting of what you have to be able to identify, wait, something has been relocated, repurposed, but at the end of the day, you're still responsible for that space. Similarly, it's not unusual for us to have people carve into the space we occupy because there is this, perhaps there is just this, people are unaware of how our space is utilized. So if somebody walking by doesn't perceive us as using a particular space, I had a workroom in one of my libraries. This was years ago. And over the summer, I came back in to set up in mid-August, and all of a sudden that door was closed and it was somebody's office. And I'm like, wait a minute. It had been my office, but somebody's like, well, you don't need an office because you sit out here at the circulation desk. You don't need an office. And it was like, again, you sit there and you have to grapple with somebody coming in and using part of that space, which had, I want to use the word always been belonging to the library, and now being repurposed for the social worker or for the speech pathologist, or it's now the new copy room. But if you don't actively demonstrate the need to have that space, somebody's going to redefine it for you.
If you are lucky enough to have an office, make sure you are spending time in there. Make sure there's stuff in there. Do not have it 100% cute and clean. Like, that is like a warning sign it's not being used. I know it might hurt some of your brains. Like, wait a minute. No, I need everything in its place. No, someone else looks at that. They see it as not really being utilized. If your space can't, if that office can fit a few people at a time, schedule meetings in there. Have those PLC meetings with a group of teachers in there. And that will also be amazing in case the space comes into question, because now those teachers will also advocate for that space. Well, wait, we also use it for blah, blah, blah with our librarian.
So my office also doubles as our lockdown. So when we go into lockdown, because much of our space is glass, we have to move our students into a place that is not. And so my workroom, I'll use the word my workroom is where we go into lockdown. So you're not going to be setting up somebody's workspace in there, because that's where we have to be able to hold 30, 40 kids if we have to go into lockdown. So I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying the reality is that if you take that away, all of a sudden what we do in the case of a lockdown becomes very different. Let's talk about your goals. And I think that this is a really interesting way of looking at how we tackle our jobs.
Just at the ready, you should always have 3 goals. Like, similarly, like the elevator pitch. Someone asks you, well, what do you really do? You need to have an answer. And make sure it sounds legit and it is right. Not just like, oh, yeah, I help kids find books. Well, yeah, that's a real important thing, but saying it like that doesn't make it seem that important. So 3 goals that are just always at the ready. A personal learning goal. So getting across that you are, yes, a constant learner. And why are you a constant learner? Because we have to know stuff so that we can help our teachers. If we don't know the new thing, they can't do it. Like, our whole grading system just did a revamp. So what did I do? I went to a training about it, and I had a teacher that was frustrated about something and didn't know how to do it. So I spent 4 hours finally figuring it out to make like a 1-pager and a 45-second tutorial. But that's just our life, like figuring it out and then getting ready with it. But that you have a personal learning goal. What is it you're working on right now? Maybe it's hexagonal thinking. I don't know, something. A reading goal or your books. Okay, so maybe it's personal reading, maybe it's reading goal with the school. You can share that. What is going on there? I'm in the middle of a massive passion project. I repurposed, I call it a reference wall. It was 9 bays, just full of those big, like floor to ceiling, full of the big reference books. Got rid of most of them because they were old, so most old stuff has inaccuracies in it. And now it's my manga wall. And well, it's been a process, but I've got, I have kids for 4 years. So I've got darlings that have read everything I have. So, okay, I'm adding to it and having a request to get more shelves made for it because the sizing difference from reference to manga. Yeah, I can put more stuff there. But like, that's my big book goal for the space that definitely assists our students. And then I can also talk about it too from a curricular standpoint. I have books in there that help with biomedicine. And yes, there is manga that does that. We have a psychology class. Yes, we have some manga series that are great with psychology. Oh, MTSS and SEL is important. Well, guess what? There's manga for that too. So always being able to bring back that curricular bit, because sadly, oh my gosh, there are some admin that don't realize that reading for pleasure is important. So have that curricular tie-in at the ready as well. And then your collaboration goal. What teacher or staff member, because it doesn't always have to be a teacher. Maybe it's your social worker and you're working on something. My big collaboration goal right now, I am creating a series of mindfulness media literacy activities. So like one of the things we're digging into fidget tools, not calling them fidget toys, fidget tools, and doing research on it and getting media literacy, and also like, oh, why would someone use this? How could it be helpful? All these different things with it, but going through a bunch of different things with that. I've got different items looking into like dopamine and how do we get that, but they're learning that for themselves. And granted, I'm also with high school, so getting that exposure to where they can have some of that self-control for themselves. But you gotta have goals, right? And you should have them ready.
When it goes circling back to that accountability piece, because collaboration is something I do, but it looks different for everybody because you're meeting people where they need it. And by the way, if anybody wants my 2-word elevator pitch, it's support everyone. That is my elevator pitch. It is support everyone, and it has made everybody happy. No administrators ever turned that one down. But when it comes to your collaboration, I've had to sort of differentiate because my collaboration looks different depending on who I'm working with. And I also differentiate collaboration and direct instruction because it's not unusual for me to collaborate. I do a great deal behind the scenes, and I support teachers a lot with the things that I am, providing them when they are teaching new classes or classes that are being reimagined. But it also, when it comes to direct instruction, so if I'm in front of the students, that is also something that I quantify and I'll be able to demonstrate with my administrators. So when it talks to collaboration, also recognize that what you're doing for teachers is going to look different depending on what they need. And it's all valuable, whether it happens in front of the classroom or behind the scenes. Let's talk about research, because this is something that I've recorded episodes on Wikipedia. We've revisited Wikipedia before. I've learned that Wikipedia, my opinions on Wikipedia are strong, but also nuanced. So tell me again, what is it that you didn't when it comes to Wikipedia?
Ban it. I have so many teachers that just say, no, you don't use it because it's wrong. Okay, well, that statement actually is false. Which is like, what? Well, yeah, it is. So Wikipedia is, if you look at our standards, it is really putting our standards into real world application. It is a collaborative thing that helps others and provides access to everyone. Like, that's amazing. If your kids make something collaboratively that helps other people that others have access to, that's a win, right? Okay, so in its first days, yes, it was easy to go ahead. I could get in there and say, Katie McNamara is the Queen of France. And it would last there for a few days. Like, I could do that. You can't really do that anymore. These people that are involved with their pages, they get alerts. They go back and they fix it. Wikipedia has gotten smarter. There was a teacher at my local community college that used to have her students go in and edit pages intentionally, falsely, to prove why not to use Wikipedia. Guess what? Now Wikipedia has banned that IP address. So even if you're the geek that owns that page, and I'm saying geek with all the love and feels with that, but if you're the geek that owns that page, you're basically in charge of it, and you happen to work there, you can't fix your page while you're at that space because now that IP address is ruined.
I think that how we approach Wikipedia, what I usually do, because I do work with high school students as well, and this is oftentimes an education for those times when you're teaching both the students in the room and the teacher in the room, you ever and you're just like, you're teaching the students, but at some point you're also speaking to the adults in the room who clearly wasn't aware of something. And what I do is I just scroll down to the bottom of every single Wikipedia page, and there's a little and tiny, it's disclaimers. Pull up Wikipedia's disclaimer page. Just pull it up and just show it to the students. I said, every single page says this. And all it says is that Wikipedia does not claim any validity here. We make no promises that anything here is correct. I said, listen, you know what? You're trying to solve a bet with your family member about a movie that you just watched? Use Wikipedia. If your grade is hanging in the balance, be very careful. Be very careful. Proceed with caution. If you are using Wikipedia Because understand, Wikipedia is a reactionary platform. It responds to the vandals. It responds eventually, but it certainly isn't, it makes no promise that any of it is ever accurate at any given time. And you have to be very careful about that. And, it is, again, depending on the context, it's established time and place. And I tell this with all my students. There's a time and there's a place for this. If you want to just, explore Wikipedia, that's fine. Your grade's hanging in the balance? Absolutely not. You deserve better. Your grade is hanging in the balance here.
So I'm going to push back just a little bit. So Wikipedia is mostly true. Start off with that. 93% it was its last bit of being true. But granted the balance, high school land especially, and some middle school, you don't cite Wikipedia. Why? Not because it might not be true, but what is Wikipedia? Wikipedia is an encyclopedia, folks. It's just an online encyclopedia. So at the higher level, we're not citing encyclopedia work ever. So again, not a reason to ban Wikipedia, but what can I do? I can read that article and get a really great cursory knowledge to help me draft my research questions that I know I want to learn more about. So I can twist it that way. And now I do my due diligence and I do my media literacy. I get into the databases. I do my lateral reading because now I'm empowered with some basic information I got from Wikipedia.
Well, and I've heard some librarians say, hey, listen, look at the outline. Look at the topics outline, because a lot of our students are just trying to formulate an approach to a topic. If they look at an outline that somebody else has created, it's going to create those vocabulary terms that they would now need to explore a topic in detail. Look at their works cited. Look at their works cited, because all of a sudden that's rich with resources that, you can start to do some of those deep dives. You're not using the Wikipedia for content. You're using it for a place to build on when it comes to where's your research going to go. What about peer review and discount databases?
Oh, okay. So I know the teachers mean well, and some of us are even dealing with concurrent enrollment or dual enrollment, working with educators at the college level. And I would say it's part of an old school philosophy of really, really requiring peer review articles. But as research has shifted and we're asking students to research our more current things, the peer review just doesn't exist. And so if you're requiring that peer review element, it's a disservice and we're not going to find it. And I've almost come to tears with kids like, I am so sorry. Like, this thing just happened. There's no way you're going to get a peer review. Go plead to your teacher. I can show you other great stuff with it, but the peer review just simply doesn't exist. I know it sounds great. Like, oh yeah, I'm trying to higher up the thinking. No.
So what about discount databases? Tell me what you're talking about, because I know not all databases are created equal. I know that in California, as in Michigan, we have databases which are provided by the state through taxpayer dollars. That's fantastic. But we also have databases which we can purchase and subscribe to, which can be exorbitantly expensive.
Yeah, so you definitely need to know the quality of your databases. Take some time to research things that could show easily things you don't want them to show. Like, usually Indigenous research will let you know the quality of your database. That's a safe space to go ahead and start. But another bit of it is there are still some, again, well-meaning educators that don't give databases the value they deserve. So the database, the whole point of that is, valid sources and whatnot. I'll still have teachers come in with their research bit and they want X amount of print and X amount of electronic. Well, honey, especially if I'm losing my bookcases, I don't have print as an option because a bunch of money is being paid for this database. And my principal just took this bookcase that housed all that stuff. So no, we got to revisit this a little bit.
So wait, I encountered this problem as well, because my students had a rubric, which God knows when it was first conceived, because the rubric now in the hands of new teachers are like, well, no, I have to do a print resource. I'm like, pause. I'm going to stop you right now. That might have been true when we had 25,000 volumes in this space. We do not have a collection with 25,000 volumes. And so you have to appreciate that when you create an arbitrary requirement like thou shalt have a print resource and 2 or 3 digital resources harkens back to a time when the idea of finding digital resources really was the question. You could always count on there being a print book in the library. I'm talking back in the long ago days of when I was in school.
Like microfiche? Yeah, that's definitely.
I'm telling you, when you require that your students go check out a book, and the only book I have is from 1992, we're not doing this. This is arbitrary, and I'm gonna actually go to the teacher and say, can we just meet let's agree on a few things right now. So I agree that we have to sort of move away from something that is as arbitrary as this is something that we used to do maybe back in the 90s. Maybe back in the aughts, but not now.
Well, then I even have had those moments where I had to protect these few books on this topic and not allow anyone to check them out. Like, oh my gosh, that's just extra management I don't need to deal with.
Let's wrap up this conversation of, oh no, you didn't, with a quick conversation on AI. AI is one of those categories of things that librarians have had to learn on behalf of our buildings. Our buildings are moving into this space, whether we are ready for it or not. But oftentimes the librarians are the ones who have taken it upon themselves to learn on behalf of others. I know I taught a session on AI at the beginning of the school year in August. So pray tell, what are some things that you would like to impart with our listening audience before we go?
Okay, so while this could be a total whole episode by itself, and we're pretty much done, let's just do a few things here. I know we're hearing artificial intelligence literacy is important, so we have to teach this, and this. No, we don't have to teach this, and this. Can we expose? Totally. So there is no school that has said it's okay for you to use your credentials to log on for someone else to use it. That is, I know, I'm saying it because it's happened, and I've had teachers brag to me, well, I just went ahead and I logged in for everyone, so then everyone's able to have a conversation with ChatGPT and see how it works. No, there are so many laws that you're actually violating in that. Never mind terms of service, so don't do that. It bypasses protections and all these other things, so please, 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 absolutely don't do that. We also can't ignore that it exists, so what's an easy way we can go ahead and show students about it and that it exists? We'll do a facilitated chat. And I love doing that, especially secondary land at the beginning of the school year. You have the projector, you're the login person, but you are just the fancy typer. The kiddos are telling you what they want you to ask it. See the answer and have that conversation. And while you're doing that, you can model how it works. You can help them with the prompt engineering, the guided prompt, fixing the things, all of those things. But also extra whammy there is you're getting across the point that you also know it exists. So they better not use it for evil.
Well, and I'm going to say right now, when we're talking about sharing logon information, my experience, my bigger concern is sharing the logins with the substitutes or the guest teachers who are coming into our space. And we absolutely, please, when it came to, oh, well, we're just going to watch this movie using my Amazon Prime, and oh, here's my Amazon Prime, and here's how you log into my Amazon Prime. And you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that could potentially go wrong here. And so, friends, when it comes to, talking about cybersecurity and having people log in as the guest teacher, or, I have a movie I want my class to watch, but I'm not going to be here. Can you just log in as yourself and have the sub, access this through your account? And I'm like, okay, I'm not cool with that. I'm not cool with logging in for somebody else and then walking away from that device like nothing's going to happen. And I just feel like this is a hill you need to die on. If somebody asks you to do that, you absolutely put your foot down and say, this is not safe. This violates all sorts of protocols when it comes to cybersecurity and our district and privacy and whatnot. So no, I think that's absolutely vital. Katie, I'm so grateful. We've been all over the map today, but I also feel that if we were colleagues and you and I could regularly sit down on a Friday after a long week and work out some of these things, these are the kinds of things that we would totally be complaining of. These are the topics we're like, can you believe today what I had to do? Can you believe the questions I got? Can you believe? And you know what? Colleagues do this all the time because they have one another. And we do this on an episode because I love that you wanted to share these things. Can you give us an idea, where we can reach out to you because you are so generous with your expertise?
So I am still on what was previously known as Twitter at Katie J. McNamara, same at Blue Sky. And I'm struggling because someone has my handle on Instagram. And you mentioned what your preferred platform. I'm floundering right now. I don't have a preferred platform. I'm really scared. And now I had to go back to Facebook land because it's trying, the teacher groups are what Twitter used to be kind of. So, but you can find me and Voxer, that works too. But
all right. Well, and you know what? I appreciate it. Listen, friends, Katie, I hope you have a fantastic school year. You've given us so much to think about, and even one or two of these things will really help modify the way we move forward with our teachers and with our students. Thank you so much. I hope you have a fantastic school year.
Thank you so much for having me. An open invitation, anyone who wants to discuss any of these further. Have a great year, all.
If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. Scholastic Teachables bring you content you'll love from a source you can trust. To learn more, visit scholastic.com/teachables. To subscribe for your library, please reach out to your Scholastic Library Specialist at 1-800-387-1437. Use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more. See the link in today's show notes. And be sure to tune in Friday, October 25th. The topic of our next episode will be Administrators as Allies, and my conversation with Sean Gaylord and Dr. Andrea Trudeau. I hope you will tune in.